there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and whoever you're lucky enough to be doing it to. I am Bushka on Blitz, and I'm here to discuss the patch day changes to the three big Tier X meds, the E50m, the FV4202, and the M48A1 pattern that we recently had in the 3.1 update that brought us also Russian lights, which we should be thankful for every day of our lives, because they're very, very exciting tanks. This is a patron-sponsored post. As always, the patrons keep the ball ticking over here, and if you would consider sponsoring the channel, it would be a wonderful thing. I'm going to post up a few videos in the next week or so of a recent patron platoon room we did, which was just bloody hilarious. But we've got a lot to get through, so let's get to it. We're going to do this E50m first, then we're going to do the FV4202. We're going to finish off with an M48A1 pattern game, because the pattern of all the tanks that we're going to look at has probably undergone the most radical changes. But they've all undergone pretty significant changes to their respective physiques, as they like to say in the bodybuilding trade. I wouldn't know, I just made that up. If you wanted to go hull down in the E50m, it was always a bit of an issue because it had about, I think it was 185mm of pen was needed to get through the facing on the turret. And its biggest advantage was the fact that it's actually quite a small area and there's a big fat gun mantlet in the middle that you can't pen. It doesn't really have much of a mantlet, but the gun itself has a very thick base. But you could get straight through the facing on the turret itself. And you'd always do that with the FV, which has 310mm of pen on its big gun, the 183mm Death Star. But you can see here, this is the new and improved E50m, and I'm shooting at him with an FV4202, which has about 269 millimeters of penetration on it, on its APCR. And you can see there, lots of red spots. Your upper plate was always really strong, but now around the gun, if you angle it left and right slightly, you'll see there's an area where it's going to go red, it's going to go grey, it's going to go red, it's going to go grey. And that's a big bonus for the E50m because it's a great sniper. And if you're in situations where people aren't using heat, it will help you tremendously. And you're going to see a few situations here where we do bounce shots off the area around our gun and our gun mantlet, because it's a little percentage point thing. It's not the huge change that the M48A1 got, where they've restructured the actual physical shape of the turret. It's more or less, it's going to get you a few more bounces every 100 shots, and that's what's important. It'll make the tank a little bit better because it wasn't markedly poor in terms of being a tank. And I'm going to show you some gameplay here from post-patch. This is all with the new improved 250mm of fat German steel around the gun. And you're going to note, like, it's still got what made it a fantastic tank in the first place, which is that gun, that .30 dispersion monster weapon that had problems with the E50 in terms of pen, and that gets solved at Tier X, and it turns this thing into an absolute riot to drive. And it's mobile enough still that you can do medium tank things. You just can't do them against Russian medium tanks. And you've still got such a big weight and such a speedy tank that you can ram them and you can shove your upper glacis in their face and do all kinds of nasty things. And it's great, and it's fun, and it's a good giggle. But heat will still trouble you. Like, heat will still give you an awful lot of strife if they hit you in the upper glacis. Now see, look at the cheeks of the E100 there. The cheeks of the tank can actually turn grey if he's flat, but when he angles it slightly, it should go red, unless you're using heat, of course, in which case you've got to angle it a hell of a lot more than slightly. And the E50m has actually become a little bit E100-ish in that you move the turret from left to right very quickly, and it will up your armour profile, and that will make it harder to hit. At distance, it's a key. And if you're in a dogfight, it gives you a little bit more of a friendly role when people try to get on top of you and actually fire into the area around the gun. I mean, the flat face of the turret. It's a known issue where people would fire into that area around the gun and get good hits and be very successful with it. And the 50M has so much going for it. Look at the size of it compared to the E100. I mean, it's not dwarfed at all, and that's important because this thing's and look at that upper plate. How much do I love this tank? I'm going to drive it some more. I can't help myself. And it can get around things that are big and fat, like the mouse. And that's good because Russian mediums are overpowered. We've talked about it before. The Object 140 and the T62A are just super strong. And I actually had a look at this map earlier today in the 140 in a game I was doing for Patron, and there's a Death Star on the map, and I find him in nearly exactly the same position as this mouse. I'm in the 140, I drop adrenaline, and I think it takes 23 seconds to kill him from the time I fire my first shot. 23 seconds, never being more than 10 meters away, just like I'm doing to this mouse here. The E50M doesn't have that kind of DPM, so you have to be a sniper. Not have to be a sniper at all, but it's an excellent sniper. This is an excellent sniper. This is the FV4202. Now, on the left, we have the original 4202 doing 40 kilometers an hour. On the right, we have the new super enhanced version of the 4202, which does 50 kilometers an hour. And that extra kilometer, 10 kilometers, gets you out there quicker and to the firing position like boom. And 5 seconds odd later, in comes the old FV4202. What that means is really important. It gets you to positions like this where you can get to the corner on Winter Malinovka in a timely fashion and absolutely pump people without turning up getting smashed yourself. You're not the one that's coming late to the party anymore. That's a huge benefit because this is a tank that has a wonderful gun. The gun is absolutely glorious and it's got hesh and it's just very, very exciting and useful. But pre-patch 3.1, you had this tank that would do 40 kilometers an hour and then sit there hitting the rev limiter and was completely unable to get out and run. And it made no sense whatsoever. And the reason I mention the Russian mediums and them being overpowered with the E50M and everything else is because it's the benchmark. And there was no reason to have these tanks suffering so much with limitations that were completely undeserved and were, for whatever reason, placing, why make it harder for guys that it doesn't need to be hard for? This thing was a joke that it could only do 40 kilometers an hour. It has a horrible turret. It's got this gorgeous gun. It's very, very nimble. It's a bit of a hill climber. It's got a fantastic upper glacis, but it's got a turret that is just a button. You can go through it with insults or penetrate the turret, the FV4202, and that's unfortunate. But with the extra 10 kilometers an hour, it's given it the opportunity to get to strong points and areas that it can hit with really, really successfully, and that's a big thing. And just a little secret for the FV4202 drivers out there: you should be learning to hit drive wheels because you don't have Premo. So always try and hit drive wheels in the 4202. Look at the speed I'm getting around here. It's in excess of 40 kilometers an hour. It gets me past the gun of that Object 268, and it got me there really, really quickly. It's a fast tank. It's got a very nice power to weight ratio. It's got excellent terrain resistance, and it's very, very nimble, and that is a real bonus. Now, let's get onwards and upwards. So the E50M, big bonus. The FV4202, I think a bigger bonus. Speed is so important on the medium. The M48A1, wow. This is the big recipient from the patch day goodies of 3.2. This is the new turret on the M48A1 with APCR from the T62A. There's a lot of red. Obviously, firing Premo will drastically reduce the penetration values of drastically reduce the armour effectiveness of the M48. But look at this. This is where it really comes into... You switch to Premo here and it's not such a big deal because the M48's always had gun depression, but it had an enormous, huge, whopping bugger-off pimple where the driver's hatch is now, where the commander's hatch is now. And that meant that when you went hull down like this, the pimple could be penetrated every time very, very comfortably. Well, now they've changed the structure of the turret. They've made it very much a tough pen rather than an easy pen, and one you have to go to Premo to be sure of getting through, and even then you're not certain of getting through it. And at range like this, when the tank is hull down and you can't hit that driver's hatch, it's bloody lovely because it's always been mobile. Make no mistakes, it's had gun depression, it's had reasonable mobility. I've had a real soft spot for it despite its giant appearance. And I've done 2 reviews on it, and it was begrudgingly both times that I told the world that it's not the best tank and you should probably be driving a Russian medium. I think this is a real winner now. I think it's a good tank. It was much like in the past I said you should be driving the STB if you're going to be driving a gun depression med because it can at least bounce shots. Well, this is now the same, but it's got a much better chassis than the STB, and the gun handling's the same bloody thing. You can see here just how mobile and nimble and how it can still get shots off despite the fact that I'm here stuck in the middle of a whole heap of humans, just popping out and hitting and smacking and pulling and turning, because it's got all kinds of bonuses and benefits now. It's got a good turret. It has a good turret, which it needed desperately. It used to be that the turret structure, even without the pimple on top, was just a very softly rounded bowl that didn't give you any protection whatsoever. You could be penned without Premo all the hell over. That's no longer the case. It just isn't. It's now a very good on the move weapon. I mean, it's always been good at on the move firing. You can see this FV. Have a look at the turret in the FV if we zoom in here, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You just pen them straight through the turret. And the fact that that was constricted to 40 kilometers an hour was a joke. And because the FV doesn't have the heat that the Russian meds have, I had no qualms there whatsoever. Just pushing up onto him and then pulling back and giving him just the turret going a bit hull down. It made life absolutely miserable for him. He couldn't pen easily, and that's a huge thing. That's an absolutely massive thing. Mobility-wise, the tank's fantastic. You can see I'm trying to track that Jagdpanzer. He's made a massive area here. He's pushed up very, very quickly and gone into an open space on his own. So he's one of those guys when everyone calls right, has gone left and decided he knows what he's going to be doing, and left himself isolated. I've counted tanks and realised that this fella is in licorice all sorts, as we like to say on the channel. That's really a solid illustration of how grand the M48A1 can be now. It's got mobility, it's got decent top end speed, it's got decent acceleration, or not decent, it's got pretty good. Its DPM is still low, which is unfortunate, and it doesn't have much in the way of fixing that. Like the FV4202 can remedy that with Hesh, and you can see here we're going to bounce a couple of non-Premo shots, and there goes another bounce, and you can see that's the whole box of dice. This thing is a much better tank. This game is interesting because you're going to see another example of the 4202 and how crap its turret is, and we're actually going to bounce a 4202 shot off the top end here of the turret again on the M48A1, and you're going to see basically a nice example of where the M48A1 can succeed these days, and that's gun depression on a hill, on an incline, working, resetting the camo, finding targets, pushing forward, pushing left, hitting them, coming back, doing the business. I'm in a game here with Path. We've actually got a stacked team. We end up being down 3 tanks to 6, and at no point in time am I even slightly worried that things are going to go awry, because the team is absolutely stacked. Anyway, you can see here, we're just working this middle section. There's something to be said for the realism value of this tank. I love the Edelweiss and such because I have a real romantic involvement with massively multiplayer RPGs, and have had for years, where you get gnomes and dragons and witches and all whatever. I've always loved those things, and the Edelweiss and such look like a clockwork variant of what a gnome tank would be, and I really enjoy that. And I love a little bit of giggle and a little bit of fantasy, and that's great. But there is a realism factor to the M48A1 and tanks like it that make it quite fun to drive. And if you're a bit of an escapist and you want to put yourself in a situation where you're pretending you're driving an old school World War II tank, well, this is the one. And look at this, we're down 3 tanks to 6. Bouncer shot off the turret. The FV4202, you can see that disaster of a turret. The fact that that was speed limited to 40 kilometers an hour is a crazy, crazy concept. The mobility on the 4801 is great. Just moving around all over the joint, filling them up. Lovely alpha, 350 alpha, very solid alpha. It's actually got very high-end HE as well. And you can see here, the reason I was never worried about losing this game was, mate, our team, I think I'm about 60 on, which I'm on the contributor account. So on this account, I'm about 2,300 average damage and about 65%. And there's 4 people on this account, this team at the moment, who have stats very, very similar to that. And 3 of them are running around there. We've got an FOE guy, we've got Path, and we've got myself, and it was the most rigged, one-sided team I think I can remember being in for quite some time. But that's the M48A1, boys and girls. It is an absolute joyous drive now. I really, really like it, and I enjoy driving it a lot, and I'm going to be driving it a lot more. Likewise, the 4202, my little British lightweight Leopard with the crap turret, but for all that gorgeous gun handling, and the E50M is moving back towards the top of the field again. None of them are going to be as good as the Russian mediums, unfortunately, but you know what? The gap is a lot narrower than it used to be. Anyway, boys and girls, thank you so much for watching. I hope you got a little bit of love out of that one. There's lots more content coming up. Nothing on tomorrow. That's a Sunday. We rest on the Sunday, boys and girls, because I have a family and I'll get garroted if I don't. But thank you so much for hanging around and listening to this long-winded explanation of the 3 changes that happened at the top of the tree in the Tier X mediums. As always, if you'd like to sponsor the channel, kick on over to Patreon. We do a lot of live events in training rooms and such. We have a chat channel, a Discord channel that's always getting filled up with people having a giggle. There's a chat channel on Telegram. There's about 130 something people in there. There's all kinds of things. There's a private sponsors area of bushka as well, which you can access with a password once you become a patron. Look after yourself, humans. Look after your families, and stay safe on the battlefield.